So I was out shooting today, and I was using something called my tall target, and I realized I've been using a tall target for a long time. And I think I did mention it in a video once. But I don't know that I've ever... I just came in, it's cold out there. It's like in the 20s. I got 1.5 feet of snow on the ground out there. And I was out setting stuff up, and I came in and dressed down and decided I'm going to talk a little bit while I'm warming up about the tall target concept. That's a tall target. It's got some shots up on the top from today between snow showers. And this is one of the targets. This morning I was talking, I recorded some stuff on cant. Those are signs of cant up there. As I was working, I was getting lazy. There was a lot of cold air coming in through the window. And I was freezing a little bit. And I decided, I didn't decide anything. I just got sloppy. And I started rolling my gun onto the target. I had just put up a fresh sheet. One of them got destroyed. I'm fighting it. I'm cold. And I dried everything out and went up and warmed up and changed out. And just, oh, guys, hey, whew. Anyway, the reason this thing works, I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring something up here. I'm going to start with the fact, got a bunch of measures here. I'm going to move right up into this camera with that thing in the background. And I'm going to show you some tall target stuff if I can. I don't know if I can get this light to work. I never do it this way. But this right here, while I was up, I ran the numbers on this because I have been using the tall target just to stack up a bunch of stuff. I haven't been using it the way a tall target is designed to be used. I went up, I warmed up, I thought, and I decided I'm going to do a YouTube episode on this. I'm going to talk about what to use on a tall target. If I sight my gun in at 100 yards, let's start with that. This is the fart, and these are the numbers for the fart that I went up and ran because I was stinking cold and I wanted to do something different. I had started playing with that target, using it just to shoot groups up and down because it was down there. And tomorrow or the next day I'm going to go out and lay it out and use it as it's supposed to be. The function of a tall target is fascinating because you take, that target's 8 feet high, and the trajectory from 100 to 600 yards on my 50 fart and my 50 fart blossom go through 84 inches of elevation. In other words, if I sight in down at the bottom, which is way down there, if I sight in on this X at 100 yards, then I go up, if I'm going to go to 600 yards, I then dial up to 85 inches. And it just works out that at right around 1,020 feet per second, I can break it into 8-inch increments. So what I'm going to do is, this will be 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, 500, 550, 600. And it'll all fit on that target. This is 7 feet above my point of aim. That's an 8-foot sheet of plywood over there. So everything can fit on there, and I can go grid this out when I have a dry day. This was the numbers I just ran up there, and they're close enough to 8 inches apart that now I have to go shoot it. Because I'm finally getting some shots, I'm finally getting some stuff down to the point where it's accurate enough that I can trust my workups. I don't know that I'm ever going to go through the procedure But try this yourself, guys. If you're shooting extreme ranges and you don't have access to a 600 or a 1000 or whatever, get yourself a ballistic program. You can set up your offsets up close, and you can actually shoot your offsets to make sure. The biggest reason for a tall target, I'm going to focus back on it again because this one's not done. When they are set up correctly, there is I'm going to grab it, mark it. You set them plumb, and you run a plumb line down the center. You sight in down here, and you work your way up through there, and you find out if your scope is tracking straight up and down or not. Whether it's a function of cant, whether it's a function of your scope not being mounted directly above the barrel, whether it's the effect of the scope being mounted crooked, it's very rare. This allows you to, number one, go out and manually dial in all your offsets all the way out to, in the case of the Fart, I can't go to 1000, but in the case of any normal gun, you can easily dial in your shooting offsets all the way up to 1000, 1200 yards. Easily. Understand, this stupid thing is loopy. There's 84 inches of difference between 100. I thought I might have to set my tall target up on 200 just to make the thing fit. And the only reason, just to be clear, it surprised me as much as it must surprise you. 8-inch down here is slightly less than 8 inches apart when I run the ballistics. Up here is slightly more than 8 inches apart. This bullet in 600 yards only loses about 80 feet per second. And I just lucked into where I just figured I'm going to do 8 inches and I'm going to shoot the tall target and then I'm going to see what I've got. It's going to be close if I'm sighted in here. It's going to be close. 16 inches up is where it would cross, it would hit 200 yards, and it's going to be close to that, and of course I'll write it down. 200, 300, 400, 500, and 600 ends up there. The vertical line, hyper important. That's what allows you to find out if your gun tracks or not, if your scope tracks or not. There are some scopes that actually track, you can't fix, but 90% of good scopes, so once you get them set vertically, but that way you can use this to set your gun up, level your gun with levels on the side or whatever you decide to use, levels on the pick rail, and then level the scope, and then shoot it, track it up, see if it... Again, the inner tube is a scary thing because redneck logic dictates that most people will opine vociferously whether they understand the rationale or not. One of the things that I've seen before is my scope doesn't track straight. Well, that's just dumb as ever. The scope has just got a reticle hanger with a spring on it and it can't track. There's no way. No, what you've got a problem with if you're not tracking is that you've got your scope canted on top of the gun. Cant of the gun scope assembly is one thing. Cant of the scope itself is another thing. This allows you to solve all those problems. You go out and you shoot through mixed yardages and you shoot straight up that line. Find out if you're tracking. Find out if your scope reaches. Then, of course, you go shoot at 600 yards and 500 and 400. I have that option here. I can walk my stuff up the range. But the tall target with all guns, I had never used it. It's been really fun using it on the Fart project. I had used it on, I was getting ready to use it on my 50 BMGs. I haven't got there yet. But I've used it all the way through the smaller stuff, normal 30 cal stuff and 22 and 6mm and varmint hunting and up to 338s. I've got a real good read on what the tall target will show you. But again, this Fart project has it's just allowed me to reopen and re-show some of the things that we've talked about before. Because with all the talk in the world about flat trajectories and flat shooting guns and this gun is faster and widening up windows and stuff, widening up the PBR, the point blank range, unless you're from Wisconsin, in which case PBR means something completely different, or Minnesota. It works better. It's a more important tool than going out in the desert somewhere and shooting measured yardages. You can learn more off of the tall target than you can by going out, in my case it would be to Eastern Oregon probably, or Eastern Washington, and setting up targets out to 1,000 yards and then shooting 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. That still doesn't resolve a lot of issues. Instead, you set up a tall target in the foreground on the 100-yard butt and you shoot it first. Then you can verify off of all of your yardages. They do work together. It's not a replacement for any of that. By any means, that's not the point. It's to give you a recorded data log. It's to give you a visual. It's to figure out how your scope tracks. And in this case, because I'm starting to use it, I've just been, because the weather's been nasty, I go out, throw some fresh stuff on, throw some X's on there, and then I just shoot up there, and I watch my velocity change go through, and I shoot down here, and I shoot down here, and I shoot down here. Because frankly, these guns are not accurate enough yet for me to do my normal thing of gridding out a paper in 1-inch or 2-inch squares and going bang, 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 bang. It's just not there. But I'm getting a handle on the extreme spread, which is the biggest kicker that I've been fighting. Both the Fart and the Blossom seem to be shooting pretty good. I'm fighting with balance issues because I cobbled up these weights. I've had to change some of my weights. This is TMI for you guys. I'm sorry that I'm even bringing it up. But there's always problems. As I said early on in this project, people come out and say, oh, you can just go buy this gun and you can shoot quarter MOA to 1,000 yards with a subsonic 50, and I call bullshit. As soon as I started, I'm running into problems. And the biggest one is this insurmountable problem of, you know, a distance in spread like that is like 18 feet per second or 20 feet per second. In this case, I was working through some, there's actually, this is from the same group up there. I dropped down to test. There's also a double up here. Thing shoots really good supersonic. I ran it up to like 1,250 feet per second just because my progression was going good, and I put two up there. They moved way over, which is again pointing to a balance issue, but I don't want to bore you with all the thoughts that rumble around inside my calabash, because number one, that's a little disturbing, and number two, life is short, then you die. So I don't really have to spend all that time with you. But I'm now changing the weights, I'm extending the reach of the thing, trying to get my separation different, thinking about building a plate or a bipod or an extended bipod. I'm convinced the guns are starting to shoot, but I'm not going to try to convince anybody else of that. That's not really a part of the journey until I can show you groups. But, as I've said early and many times on the journey, as we go, when I see something that I think is interesting or just a nice piece of roadkill, I'm going to stop and pull over and go, hey guys, check out what I just found. Or check out what I'm learning, or check out what I'm using. In this case, it's something I'm not really learning the tall target technique. I've been using it for 25 years. But I've never brought it up on the channel, and some people are not aware that there's reasons. You can just rip a piece of plywood, or you can bring a whole sheet of plywood out and stand it up if you got a place to put it up in the wind. Plumb a line on it, and you can mark out all kinds of cool things on there and use it for learning. It's just a great learning tool to have at your disposal. So I wanted to throw it up there and say, got a tall target rolling, guys. Even though this one's not being used as a tall target, that's how you do it. Take a sheet of cheapo plywood, which doesn't even exist anymore. Take a $40 sheet of plywood and cut it into 3 tall targets. See you on the flip.